It's weird, it's wiggly, it's challenge rating 3. Today we're talking about flail snails. So as with any creature, you have to talk about 1, how it is as an actual creature, or basically an enemy that the party could face. 2, how it is as a trap, or basically a hazard or obstacle for the party. 3, how the particular creature is as a reward, or what does it have on it that the party would actually want to keep for themselves. And lastly, how can it be used as a plot hook, or basically something that makes your story more interesting. We're going to cover each of these one at a time. So, flail snails are actually a creature of elemental earth that mostly live in underground tunnels, areas of the Underdark, various caves, things of that nature. They eat rocks and precious metals, gems, things of that nature. And as they move along the ground, they actually leave this really cool slimy stuff that then turns into glass that can actually be used for crafting, windows, things like that. They have tentacles all on the top, about the top of their head, that are actually spiky and hard, which can actually be used as flails, of course, hence the name. Most flail snails will have 5 of these, and as such, they will be able to make 5 attacks against your party, which can be pretty scary if your party is unprepared, or if perhaps someone a bit more squishy is the first one to encounter them. Also of note, their shells are very shiny, usually rainbow colored. They have a couple different neat effects. The first is that the flail snail can actually create a very bright, blinding, stunning light out to like, I believe 30 feet. It's sort of like a giant flashbang. Everyone has to make a constitution saving throw or else be stunned. This can be pretty bad, especially if your party gets stunned, and then the next turn they don't make their save, and then they get hit by 5 flails. It's gonna hurt. Now, the shell of the snail is anti-magic. It will actually repel magic. Whenever you go to attack the snail using a magical spell, it will have advantage on all of its saves, and you will have disadvantage on all your spell casts against it. And in the event that it makes its save, or you fail on your attack, the spell has a chance of ricocheting back and hitting you, or the magic will actually store in the shell, and then it can exert it in a nova of magic. It's particularly challenging. Or there's a chance that, of course, nothing will happen if you're lucky. Really, really lucky. Now, the upside to the flail snail for the party is that 1, it's not very smart, and 2, it moves very, very slowly. As such, in the event that the party's in over their heads and they're smart enough, they can honestly just run away. It's not too hard to do. Also of note about the creature itself, before we move on to the trap section, is that the creature is specifically an elemental. It is not a beast. Do not let your druids turn into this creature. There you go. So flail snails make an excellent trap, and all you need to do to turn a creature into a trap, in this case, is take an aspect of it and turn it into a separate part. To kind of give an example, a flail snail could perhaps be have its head sticking out of a wall, and then as the party goes by, it kind of perks up and makes several attacks against a party member. And then so the party needs to know to kind of look out for those tentacles dangling along the edge of the wall if maybe they weren't looking for those. The shells of the flail snail are, of course, reflective dispels, and as such, you can have an entire room made out of flail snail shell. And so as the party goes to try and solve this problem, anytime they try to use magic to solve it, it ricochets back into their face. So there's lots of creative use with sort of the flail snail shell and sort of the goopy stuff that supposedly covers it, that gives it that property. Lastly, the flail snail's ability to create a blinding, flashing light, a flashbang almost, if you will, is a great trap or even a setup for an encounter. Imagine the party finds a big shell. They aren't sure what it is, and then there's a goblin on the far side of the room that pulls back an arrow, hits the shell, and then that wakes up the Flail Snail, and it explodes in a flashing light. The party is stunned as the Flail Snail wakes up angry, and goblins descend upon your party. You won't want to run that at level 3, but it'll definitely be a fun time. Or perhaps a room, a maze of sorts with several hazards, and then also are, of course, sleeping Flail Snails that you don't want to wake up, or once again, they'll blind the entire party in a blast of light and possibly sound. It's kind of up to you. Elementals are weird. As far as treasures and rewards are concerned for the Flail Snail, it's actually worth quite a bit of money. The shell, all by itself, if you manage to gather the whole thing, which weighs 250 pounds, and take it to market and sell it, is worth around 5,000 gold pieces, so really big money. Also, the shell can be broken down into 3 shields, each of which gives the reflexive property of spells for 1 month, and then after that, it's great for making into a spell guard shield, which you can find out more about in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Also, the shell can be broken down, and if there's a particularly good person at making magic items, they can break down that shell, create a dye, and then that can be used for a robe of scintillating colors, which basically has 3 times a day the same flashbang effect that the shell of the Flail Snail has normally. Also of note, the glass left over by the snail, as I mentioned before, can actually be harvested as well, which is also possibly worth money. So quite a bit of funds there. Be aware of that, but your party probably won't be aware of that unless they roll really good rolls. So that's Flail Snails in a nutshell, or a snail shell, or yes. Anyway, if you want to check them out, go ahead and pick up a copy of Volo's Guide to Monsters. You can find that at your local game or hobby shop. It's a really great book, lots of great monsters in there. As always, I'm Miles, and we'll see you in the next dungeon. This is the blooper reel. Saying flail and then snail and then shell over and over while trying to have coherent thought is the worst thing you've ever done. First, let's talk about... Oh, damn it. On saves, the casters will have disadvantage on their spellcast saving... Fuck! Lastly, of course, is the flail shell